For decades he walked among us. He shook hands with the rich, the famous, and the powerful. He promised security, growth, and peace of mind, and the world believed him. His name was Bernie Madoff, and he was building the largest financial lie in American history. Imagine trusting someone with your life savings. Imagine believing that your future was safe, only to realize it was all an illusion. This is the story of the man who stole time, the man who fooled America, and the man whose empire of lies finally collapsed. Stay with me until the end, because this is not just a crime story. It is the story of trust, betrayal, greed, and the lives forever changed by one man. They said he was the safest man on Wall Street. They said if you gave your money to Bernie Madoff, you could sleep at night. And for years thousands did. They trusted his calm voice, his gentle smile, his quiet confidence. He was the man who never raised his tone, never lost his cool, never seemed unsure. His name carried power. His reputation was gold. He had been the chairman of NASDAQ, the kind of man the rich wanted to shake hands with. His clients were celebrities, retirees, foundations, people who wanted peace, not risk. They believed he had the secret to steady wealth, and Bernie made sure they never had a reason to doubt him. He called it a split-strike conversion strategy. It sounded complex, safe, and sophisticated, but there was nothing behind it. No trades, no investments, no real portfolio. It was an illusion printed neatly on paper and mailed every month. The clients saw their balances grow, and they smiled. Bernie had built an empire out of faith. Faith of the desperate, faith of the greedy, faith of the blind. And he fed it carefully like a fire that must never go out. Every new investor kept the old ones happy. Every lie built another layer of confidence. And Wall Street applauded him for his consistency. When markets crashed, his returns stayed smooth. When fortunes were wiped out, his clients still gained. Too perfect, too constant, too unreal. But no one wanted to ask why. Asking would mean facing the truth. And the truth was a monster hidden behind kindness. Behind the calm-faced Bernie was drowning. Every morning he put on the same suit, the same smile, the same act. He walked into his office as the master of money, but inside he was a prisoner of his own promise. He knew one day the tide would turn. He knew one day the calls would come, and when that day came everything would crumble. For now he smiled, for now the world believed. But somewhere in the distance the first crack had already formed. The empire built on silence, the hum of computers, the click of typewriters, the rustle of paper. It was another ordinary day inside the Madoff investment office. Young assistants moved with practiced calm, printing reports, sealing envelopes, sending statements. Millions of dollars on paper, millions of dreams on the line. But none of it was real. Every report was fiction, every number invented by Bernie and his small circle of loyal staff. They called it the 17th floor, a place only a few truly understood. Behind locked doors they ran the secret engine that kept the illusion alive. Bernie had two worlds, the public world of wealth and success, and the private world of fear and fabrication. On the outside he was admired, on the inside he was trapped. Every night he stared at the accounts. Every day he prayed no one would ask for too much money back, because if they did the whole house of cards would fall. He had stolen billions, but he didn't see himself as a thief. In his mind he was buying time. He told himself he would fix it soon. He just needed one more year, one more lucky break, one more miracle. But miracles never come for men who live on lies. He flew across cities speaking at charity events. He donated millions to hospitals, schools, and causes that called him a hero. And in the quiet hours after applause, he sat alone with his thoughts, wondering how long the applause would last when the truth came out. By 2007, whispers began to spread. A few analysts questioned the math. How could anyone make money when everyone else was losing? But the world ignored them, because it was easier to believe the story than face the fear. Bernie Madoff was no longer just a man. He was a symbol of stability in an unstable world. And symbols are hard to destroy, but symbols can crack, and his was already shaking beneath the surface. As the economy trembled and markets collapsed in 2008, the foundation of his empire began to shake with it. And the man who once controlled billions could now feel everything slipping through his fingers. When the money stopped flowing, the year was 2008, and the air in New York carried fear. The markets were collapsing, banks were dying, companies that once looked untouchable were begging for help. People were losing homes, jobs, and hope, and suddenly everyone needed cash. Investors who had trusted Bernie Madoff for years started calling asking for withdrawals. They needed money to survive, and Bernie said of course he would send it. But behind the calm voice, panic was building. He had no money left, no investments to liquidate, just a black hole where billions used to be. For years the flow of new money had fed the machine, but now the flow had stopped. The world had changed and the river had dried up. Bernie sat in his office day after day trying to think of a way out. He looked at spreadsheets that told him nothing could be fixed. He had built a lie too large to hide, and now the walls were closing in. He told his sons that the business was in trouble. He spoke softly, carefully, like a man trying not to wake a sleeping storm. But they could see the fear in his eyes. They had worked beside him and still never knew the full truth. His clients kept calling, their voices full of confusion and disbelief. They had trusted him with everything, their savings, their retirements, their peace of mind. He gave them calm words, he gave them hope, he gave them lies, and each lie tore another piece from his soul. On December 10th, he finally broke. He called his sons and told them the truth. It was all fake, every statement, every report, every gain. He told them he had nothing left. He told them it was all one big lie. His sons stared in silence, unable to breathe, unable to understand. Their father, the man they admired, the man the world trusted, was confessing to stealing billions from thousands of people. They left the room in shock, and within hours they called the authorities. Bernie Madoff, the man who fooled the world, was about to face the truth he had run from for decades. The fall of the King of Wall Street. The news spread like wildfire across America. Bernie Madoff arrested for the largest financial fraud in history. The world froze in disbelief. Reporters camped outside his home. Cameras flashed through the night. Neighbors whispered. Clients cried. Some refused to believe it. Some refused to forgive it. And some could not survive it. Fortunes were wiped out overnight. Charities closed. Retirees lost everything. Families who had once lived in comfort now faced nothing but uncertainty. Inside his penthouse, Bernie sat quietly as the world collapsed around him. He did not run, he did not fight. He seemed almost relieved that the pretending was finally over. When investigators searched his records, they found chaos. No trades, no investments, nothing real. Just fake statements and broken promises worth over $65 billion. $65 billion. The biggest financial crime in history. A number so huge it felt impossible. In court, he spoke softly. He said he was sorry. He said it started small and spiraled out of control. But his words brought no comfort. They were too late, too empty, too cold. The courtroom was filled with victims. Some cried, some shouted, some just sat frozen. Their lives were gone, their trust shattered, and the man who caused it all stood only a few feet away. The judge sentenced him to 150 years in prison, a symbolic number for a crime that destroyed generations. As he was led away, Bernie looked calm, the same calm that had fooled everyone for so long. But behind that calm there was nothing left. No empire, no legacy, no illusion. Just a man who stole time and finally ran out of it. The prison walls and the ghosts of the past, the sound of metal doors closing echoed through the halls of the Federal Correctional Complex. Bernie Madoff entered a new world, a world with no suits, no applause, no silence to hide behind. In prison, everyone knew his name. Some hated him, some admired him for his cunning, but most just stared at the man who once controlled billions, now living in a small gray cell. He had spent decades commanding respect, and now he waited in line for meals. He had once spoken to presidents, and now he answered to guards. His body grew weaker, his eyes dimmed, but his mind never stopped replaying the empire he had built and destroyed. He thought about the people who trusted him. He thought about their faces, their letters, their pain. Some inmates asked him for advice on money. They called him the Wizard, the Wall Street Man, and he would smile a faint, tired smile, as if those titles meant nothing now. In the long nights he lay awake listening to the hum of the prison lights. He thought of his wife Ruth, who had lost everything. He thought of his sons, who no longer spoke to him. He thought of the silence that followed every lie he ever told. Outside the prison walls, the world kept talking about him. Books, documentaries, interviews. His name became a symbol of greed and deception, a warning to every investor who ever believed too much in certainty. Bernie Madoff had become a ghost that haunted Wall Street, a reminder that even the most trusted faces can hide the darkest truths. He spent his days reading newspapers, counting the hours, walking the yard, and sometimes he whispered to himself, "It was never supposed to end like this." But the truth is, it always had to. Outside the prison, another story unfolded. The story of a family broken by secrets. Ruth Madoff, once the wife of one of the richest men in New York, now lived quietly away from the spotlight. Her wealth, her homes, her friends, all gone. She was the wife of the man who destroyed thousands of lives, and the world never let her forget it. She said she never knew what her husband had done. Some believed her, some did not. But either way, the punishment was heavy. Their sons Mark and Andrew tried to rebuild their lives. They said they had no part in their father's crimes. They cooperated with investigators. They faced endless questions. But the weight of the shame never left them. Mark struggled the most. He could not escape the shadow of his father's name. And on the second anniversary of Bernie's arrest, he ended his life in his apartment, leaving behind a wife and 2 children. The world mourned again. A second tragedy born from the first. Andrew tried to move on to live for his family, but years later cancer took him too. He died still carrying the burden of his father's sins. Bernie read the news from his cell. He did not cry, at least not where anyone could see. But those who saw him after said the light inside him dimmed for good. He had lost his fortune, his freedom, and now his sons. Everything he built had turned to dust. The name Madoff once meant power. Now it meant pain. And the man who had stolen billions was left with only memories of what he had destroyed. Across America, thousands woke up to find their lives erased overnight. The news said it clearly, their investments, their savings, their futures gone. Some sat in disbelief, staring at account statements that now meant nothing. Some wept quietly in their kitchens. Some shouted into the wind asking why. They had trusted a man who looked honest, who spoke softly, who promised safety in a dangerous world. And he had taken everything. There were retirees who had worked 40 years, saving every dollar for peace in their final days. There were charities that fed the hungry, now unable to feed anyone. There were universities that lost funds meant to teach the next generation. The ripple spread wide and deep, and the pain was not just in the money. It was in the betrayal. Many of them were older people who had believed that steady returns meant stability. They had believed that Bernie Madoff was different. He understood them, he cared for them. Or so they thought. Now they faced bills they could not pay, homes they could not keep, and dreams that would never come true. One man said he felt as if someone had stolen not his money, but his time. Decades of work gone in a blink. Families fought children, turned against parents. Some victims could not face the shame of losing everything. Some took their lives. Others tried to start again from nothing. Lawyers and investigators filled the news promising justice. But no amount of justice could return the lost years. The name Bernie Madoff became a wound, a reminder of how greed can wear the mask of trust, and how easily faith can be broken when hope blinds reason. The victims were not just numbers on paper. They were voices, stories, and hearts that would never forget the man who stole time. The fall of Bernie Madoff shook the foundations of finance. Suddenly, regulators faced questions. How could a fraud this big last this long? How could no one see the cracks? Committees were formed, hearings filled the news. Senators, bankers, analysts, all searching for answers. And the answers were simple and painful. No one wanted to look too closely when everything seemed fine. New laws were written. Oversight grew stronger. But for the victims, the reforms came too late. Across the country, documentaries aired, books were written, voices debated. Some called Madoff a monster. Others called him a mirror, reflecting the greed of a generation. In his prison cell, he read the headlines quietly. Each story another echo of the world he once ruled. He told a journalist in an interview that he felt sorry for what he had done, but no apology could fill the emptiness he left behind. The financial world tried to rebuild its image, but trust once broken takes years to return. And for ordinary Americans, especially those who had lost everything, the word investment no longer meant opportunity. It meant risk. It meant fear. It meant Bernie. The shock wave changed how people saw wealth and power. They learned that even the calmest smile can hide a storm, and that sometimes the most dangerous criminals wear suits, not masks. The legend of Bernie Madoff was over, but his shadow stretched long across the years that followed. Time moved slowly inside the prison walls. Days bled into nights, and the name Bernie Madoff began to fade from the headlines. He was no longer the face of Wall Street. He was just another inmate with a number and a routine. His health began to fail. The years of stress, the weight of guilt, the age that finally caught up with him. His body weakened, his skin grew pale, his steps slower. Sometimes other prisoners asked about the money. Where did it go, they would whisper. Was there anything left hidden somewhere? He would shake his head and say nothing. He spent hours in the library reading newspapers, old financial journals, old headlines that once praised him. He saw his own name beside words like thief, fraud, betrayal, and sometimes he would close his eyes as if trying to erase it all. He received few visitors. Ruth came less often. The world had taken everything from her too. The families of victims still wrote letters, some filled with anger, others with pain, some even with forgiveness. He never replied. He said there was nothing he could say that would make a difference. Each night he lay on the small bed, listening to the hum of the lights. He thought about the faces of the people he ruined. He thought about his sons and wondered if they would ever forgive him. He thought about the moment he decided to lie, that first choice that changed everything. In those quiet moments, even he seemed unsure whether he had been evil or just weak. He once told a reporter that he felt trapped by his own legend, that people expected perfection and he was too afraid to fail. But fear is no excuse for destroying lives. In the end, Bernie Madoff became a symbol not of wealth, but of warning. A lesson that still echoes through every bank, every broker, every investor who dares to trust too much. Bernie Madoff died in prison in April 2021 at the age of 82. The news spread quietly through the same world that once worshipped him. Some felt justice had been served. Others said it could never be enough. The victims remembered the sleepless nights, the tears, the broken homes. They remembered the promises he made and the lives he destroyed. His death brought no joy, only silence. The world moved on, but his name never disappeared. In documentaries, classrooms, podcasts, and YouTube videos, his story kept returning. A reminder of how greed can disguise itself as generosity, how confidence can hide corruption, and how one man's illusion can destroy the lives of thousands. Financial experts still study his methods. Regulators still point to his case as the warning that built new systems of control. But the greatest lesson was not about numbers. It was about trust. Trust is the most valuable currency in the world. Once it is stolen, it can never truly be replaced. Bernie Madoff left behind no empire, no fortune, no legacy of success, only a trail of loss that stretched across continents and generations. His name became a ghost story whispered on Wall Street, a reminder that even the most powerful can fall, that lies, no matter how carefully built, will always collapse in time. In the end, Bernie Madoff did not just steal money. He stole years. He stole dreams. He stole time. And that is the story of the man who fooled the world and paid the price that even billions could not buy. The empire has fallen. The man who fooled millions now spends his days in prison. But the stories of his victims remain. Their lives, their pain, their courage are the real legacy of this crime. If you learned something today, if this story moved you, make sure to subscribe and click the bell, because we bring you true crime stories from across America. Stories that are real, stories that are chilling, and stories that you can listen to any time. Remember, trust is the most valuable currency in the world, and once it is stolen, it can never truly be replaced. Thank you for listening, and we will see you in the next story.